I'm going to share a public relations truth with you. The less you grapple with the opposition, the more belligerent they will appear. The opposition will do everything they can to perpetuate your crisis through negative press, social media, emails, and even political marketing. If there's anything you need to remember from this video interview, it's this: when there's no conflict, there's no crisis. Land development can be very profitable, it can be very political, and in today's social media age, it can be very public. And so when we're talking about social media and land development, you have to factor in the notice and hearing process, which everyone knows is outdated. But what not everyone is really looking at, and is part of my presentation, is the notice and hearing process can also be the catalyst for the crisis that demonizes the most sustainable land use projects. So why is that? It is because the notice and hearing operates in a legal, logical, and linear process incapable of helping developers effectively mitigate the crisis that's really driven by the emotional, political, and chaotic assaults that we see everywhere across the country. So savvy opposition become very adept, or they are very adept at opposing these vulnerabilities, causing crisis that delays, disrupts, and even defeats many of these good land use projects. So in my presentation, we talk about my 3M methodology that stands for minimize, maximize, and marginalize. And this methodology has been honed over the last 20 years, beginning when I was elected mayor of a Florida city in one of the most urbanized counties in the country, and that's Pinellas County down in the Tampa Bay area. So we begin this 3M methodology by understanding the primary rule of conduct, and that is not to make a crisis worse. And to achieve this, we start executing what I call the 10 don'ts that are crucial to the fate of your project. These 10 rules or don'ts will immediately impact the first few hours, days, and even weeks of your crisis. And one of those don'ts I'll even share with you now, and that is no matter what, as you're trying to minimize this target that's now on your back, do not do a town hall meeting. What happens at a town hall meeting? They get hijacked and they become Jerry Springer episodes. Hence, it's a forum for conflict that energizes the crisis. So why give your opposition a platform for conflict? In other words, if you're perceived as combative, conflicted, or confrontational, then you're helping the opposition further the crisis, and you're essentially digging a deeper grave for your project. So once we go from minimize, we go to the next part of the presentation, which is to maximize. And here we start to pivot from being reactive and defensive now to being responsive, positive, and even proactive. Here we discuss leveraging the reputation of your company as well as the reputation of the community leaders who are continuing to support your project throughout this crisis. So in the presentation, I go into now these 8 do's that have proven to not only garner community and corporate goodwill, but effectively mitigates the crisis stemming from the social, political, and even media constructs. Land use professionals have executed some or many of these do's and don'ts, but nowhere will you find a more comprehensive and honed-in presentation of these do's and don'ts than in my presentation, Crisis Leadership. So if you follow my 10 don'ts to minimize and my 8 do's to maximize, then you'll not only gain community goodwill, but create an environment that marginalizes self-serving factions and outside special interests. So what happens here is they're essentially losing credibility while you gain yours. You're not only gaining credibility, but you're also exceeding the credibility you had even before the crisis began. So in essence, you are winning the conflict by not being in conflict. And community stakeholders will appreciate how you handled yourself and the project during this crisis, which often leads to favorable community support and political approvals. I'm available to speak at your lunch and learns, participate on panels, or even conduct more in-depth workshops or training seminars. But if your location is too far or your budget is too small, we can even do a video conference or some other channel of education. I also still consult on corporate projects that require more immediate attention, so feel free to reach out. So thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your time. I hope you were able to take this information and make it useful to your interests and your projects. and I look forward to building more relationships as we proceed forward with crisis leadership, how to turn controversial land development into your finest hour. Thank you.